I call to order the City of Glenwood Springs City Council meeting for March 19th, 2026. Good evening, everyone. This is our regular meeting for the second part of the month. And Ryan, would you please take roll call?
Mayor Dame,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelensky, Councilor Townsley, Councilor Schmall, Councilor Weimer, Councilor Smith.
Is the microphone?
Yeah, I'll have to go back since Steve just moved.
Oh, he told me to move. Do you want to tell
Oh.
me again?
My fault. I thought his name tag was up front.
No, I can go back and do it. It's just gonna take a couple minutes.
Okay.
Would it be easier?
Or should we just have him?
Yeah. you
Sorry,
want both
Steve,
back?
I was misinformed. Never mind. It's all good. Now you don't have to sit next to Mitch.
Councilor Weimer wants more space.
That's right. I can't. I'm kind of stuck. So, changes to the agenda, first from council. If I see none, there's a small change tonight. Actually, there's two, and we're gonna move through one with a motion and the other one actually as well. I would like to move item 9, the Charter Commission. And I know Mr. Banks has showed up, so thank you very much for being here, but I feel like we owe it to the chairperson of that Charter Commission to also be able to be here, and he sent us notification earlier tonight that he had an emergency that he can't make it. So I would entertain a motion to move the Charter Commission item to the first meeting in April. Yes, he did request it. The chairperson did request it, correct. So entertaining a motion. Mayor Pro Tem Zelensky.
I second your motion.
No, you have to make the motion.
Oh, I have to, you.
I am
you said you
entertaining a
moved it.
motion.
Oh, okay. I thought you just moved.
No.
I move that we move. Continue, move the Charter Commission item number 9 to the April 1st meeting, the first meeting in April.
Which is what, the
I think
third or
it's-
so, or second, or whatever it is.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I have a motion to move this item, and Councilor Weimer,
Second.
and a second. Call for the question.
Yes, Councilor Townsley. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Zelensky. Yes, Mayor Dame. Yes, Councilor Weimer. Yes, Councilor Schmall. No, Councilor Smith. It passes 5-1.
All right, thank you. That was one change, and let's see, the other change that I'd like to just get done and over with is planning file. Oh, interesting, ARC 000-130-2025, and it's item 11. The applicant requested for continuance to the April 2nd meeting, so I am also entertaining a motion in that.
Just here if you need me.
Okay, if we have any questions, we can ask Trent, but at this point, motion, please. Mayor Pro Tem Zelensky? Yep, somehow, I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, okay.
All right, so I move that we honor the request from the applicant to move planning file ARC -000-130-2025 to for continuance on April 2nd.
Excellent, thank you. Looking for a second. Councilor Weimer.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on this? But it's a clear request from the applicant, so it shouldn't be a big deal. But Councilor Schmall?
Are there implications to timing of the application and approval process based on this postponement?
No, and the benefit of continuing it tonight means that we would not need to re-notice that item that was scheduled for tonight previously.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? See none, I'll call for the question.
It's unanimous. It passes.
Right, thank you. That was it for changes. We have any conflict of interests from on council side tonight? We'll see none. Good, we'll move into the citizens appearing before council for items that are not on the agenda. Now, most of you are here for an item I think it is item 8. The public update for the special use permit. So if you're here for this, I have your names on the list here, which is great. You can always add your name or you can just raise your hand when I call. Other than that, anybody here for items that are not on the agenda? Okay, we'll see none. I will close the public portion for those 3 minutes. And we'll move into item number 5, council announcements. Council, please. Just push the microphone button on the bottom. Yep. There you go. Councilor Smith.
Thank you. The Workforce Housing Advisory Board, as it's still called, met on March 10th, including a cadre of new members. So the board is really enlivened with even more talent. They had some very helpful discussions on several items, but in particular made a recommendation regarding a novel housing development proposal that I think will eventually work its way through either a combination of P&Z and the city council or otherwise, but they weighed in on that in a very thoughtful way. The Downtown Development Association met yesterday, or maybe it was the day before. And among many other discussions, the city manager presented an update on parking management, downtown parking management, and the concept of paid parking downtown to that DDA board. And there was quite a robust discussion. But one tangible result is that the DDA board is going to send representatives to arrange a joint meeting with the Transportation Commission, who is also looking at this. So there's some kind of creative cross-pollinating afoot that should bring some good, helpful information about it. You may have noticed that the Chamber Resort Association had a local economic profile update, their annual show that was supposed to be Monday. It's now postponed until May 20th. So watch out for details on that. The Garfield Clean Energy Board meets tomorrow, mostly talking about finances, but it's coming up and there may be a report back from that. Councilor Zelinski, I was going to highlight the fact that the RAFTA board has some new non-voting members, but maybe you're going to do that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, you've got the floor. Go for it.
I think Councilor Zelinski is going to give a more thorough report on the RAFTA board meeting, which was earlier this week, working for Transportation Authority. I just wanted to note that at that meeting, 2 new non-voting members were seated on the board, one representing Garfield County, one representing Rifle, which struck me as a creative step forward in terms of better communication. So it's kind of a cool deal. But Aaron's got the other juicier details. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski, please.
Just a couple of little things. Yeah, so the 2 new non-voting members to the RAFTA board is exciting because that activates our communities to the west to our greater transportation conversations, which I see as a real positive for all of us. And the other thing was just to kind of add clarity around the raised grant that the West Glenwood Transit Center, or that RAFTA had received for the West Glenwood Transit Center. I think that it may have hit the news that had gotten pulled. The RAFTA was able to secure a 5-year extension, so that just puts that project on pause, but it doesn't kill it, which is, I think, a good thing for our community also in terms of public transportation. And then, on the tourism side of things, believe it or not, there's some positives. I guess no snow is good for Glenwood Springs, which is news to me. But visitor spending is up, which is a good thing. And that's good for our local economy. And it shows that Glenwood still has a great deal of appeal. And then also, in terms of tourism, it's kind of a DDA thing, but we're looking at activating some more of our local events and having our DDA kind of take that on. We've got some new resources and amenities with the North Landing, continued use of the area under the plaza. We might see things like Oktoberfest make a, kind of reemergence. So, good things happening on both of those fronts. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other announcements? We'll see none. Thank you for that. Moving on to item 6, the consent agenda, and I am entertaining a motion. Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski, please.
I would like to move to approve the consent agenda as it is written.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve. Counselor Smith.
I'll be glad to second that. And now we're at an appropriate moment. I'll highlight this little letter that relates to one of those items.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we're gonna go into discussion, and why don't you start?
Great. One of the items, as you know, is a request of the city of Glenwood Springs provide a letter of support for a grant application through Garfield or Clean Energy Economy for the region and their partner called Colorado Car Share to put a pilot station into Glenwood Springs to try car sharing, by the way, using an all-electric vehicle. My note is that in our city council original packet, there was a sample letter for that endorsement. I presume to do some editing on that to, I think, make it a little more specific and relevant to Glenwood Springs. And that's the letter that you have before you. If you like this version of the letter, I would like to imply or without objection, have that be part of this approval of that item.
And you're referring to item C.
Great, yes.
Thank you. Any more discussion about the consent agenda? Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
I just want to extend a note of appreciation to Kasana Ogilvy, who is going to be reappointed to our Finance Advisory Board. I'm always so grateful to citizens who are willing to serve on our boards and commissions and help us do the good work we do.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I got a tiny little add-on and I missed that in the agenda changes. The item E on the consent agenda has been removed earlier in the week because we missed the deadline for submitting that letter. No? Oh,
It's being
no.
released. That's a.
That was a different letter.
it's a new E.
Yeah, which is, I was gonna comment.
Then whatever I just said never happened. So A through F stands the way it is. They have a stand. So if there's no more discussion, I'll call for the question.
It passes. It's unanimous.
Excellent, thank you. Item 7, Arbor Day proclamation. And for that, I'm gonna ask Eric Schwind to come up front and I'll meet you up there. And then Mitch is usually in charge. Come up. And it's very good to meet you. Good, thank you, Ryan. All right. That's the sign. All right, let's see. So it is that time of year again. We have Arbor Day and we usually issue a proclamation, and Eric here is our urban ecology and forestry supervisor for the city of Glenwood Springs, and he works on the Parks and Rec Department. Official proclamation. Whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can be a solution for combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable source, resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, whenever they're planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Marco Dame, Mayor of City of Glenwood Springs, do hereby, April 24th, 2026, proclaim as Arbor Day in the city of Glenwood Springs, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees and gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this for future generations. Dated this 19th day of March, 2026. There you go. I'm going to sign this and then you can have. Thank you, Eric. So much for trees. Trees are great. Okay. Moving on to item 8. Correct. That was number 7. We're going at 8. A public update on special use permit and certificate of occupancy status for 100 200 Midland Avenue occupied by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And from what I understand, I think Steve Boyd is going to kick this off, and then legal has also a small presentation. So please, Steve.
Yep, that's correct. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Steve Boyd, I'm your city manager. I'm not going to be breaking any news tonight, I don't think, but I wanted to give everybody an update so that everybody knows what is happening and where we are right now with this facility. A temporary certificate of occupancy was issued in 2004 for this facility after it passed final inspection. That means all the life, health, safety issues were completed, but there may have been a punch list of things that still needed to get done before there was a permanent CO that was issued. That permanent CO was never issued, and it looks like it was administrative oversight on the part of the city at that time. So no life safety issues, but we should have issued that CO and we didn't. Also at that time, a special use permit was issued by the city, which is what allows the detention facility portion of the building. Results of a recent Freedom of Information Act request that was filled by the federal government appear to show a number of instances where they violated the terms of that special use policy or special use permit and held people there longer than 12 hours, which was a key part of that agreement. In 2003, the facility was actually approved, and that happened through a properly noticed public hearing. There was no comment at the time. So at this point, we would inspect that facility if there's a complaint or if there's a reason that they're going to put in for another building permit. That didn't happen for a while. We did get a complaint recently here. We went out and inspected the facility right away as soon as we could. There were a handful of things that they need to clean up before a new CO can be offered. I think that there are 2 potentially life safety issues there. One of them is the sprinkler heads need to be replaced. That is just an age thing. The code requires that happens every 20 years, and those are at their life's end. And I'm told that's going to be done on the 23rd, I think. The other issue potentially is we did not have in our file a copy of their evacuation plan. They had one, we just didn't have it, and we do now, and it is approved by us. So we don't really get to choose what tenants go in property owners' businesses here, right? And we need to treat everybody the same. So as long as they clean those things up, the city has to issue another certificate of occupancy. The special use permit is another matter because we do have some reason to believe that there have been violations. The city will initiate an enforcement process that's outlined in our municipal code. It's going to include an issuance of a notice of violation to the Government Services Agency or Administration. That is who manages leases on behalf of the federal government. They'll be given an opportunity to respond, and unless their response provides evidence that there was no violation, it will go to a hearing in front of Planning and Zoning Commission. And the purpose of that hearing would be to determine whether or not to revoke their special use permit. That would probably happen in April. This is a quasi-judicial matter, so council and P&Z members are probably going to be asked not to discuss this by your city attorney, who I'm going to ask to come up here when I'm finished. when we first heard of this, we took immediate action to address the issues. We put out press releases. I haven't turned down any requests for interviews. We filled, I don't know how many core requests. We've tried to be as transparent as we possibly can. It's taken a little while to pull all the information together. In fact, I jumped the gun a little bit and said something to somebody that wasn't right and had to go back and apologize. Sorry about that. But we are trying to be as transparent as possible. If we miss something, like a permanent CO, we will own it and we will fix it, and that's what we're doing. It's been said that we are knowingly letting an illegal operation continue for 20 years, denying public input and evading mandatory safety inspections. It's not quite accurate. We didn't know that the CO, the permanent CO, hadn't been issued. We don't know of any life safety aspects at all. I think that they'll replace the sprinkler heads. We have no reason to think the sprinkler system doesn't work, but that should fix that. So there's a complicated situation. There's a couple of decades of history behind it. It's also true that the environment back then, shortly after 9/11, was very different than the environment that we're in today. So we're trying to deal with it directly right now. And I think we've got some people that have showed up tonight to speak on behalf of it. But with that, I will turn it over to Carl Hanlon. City Attorney.
Thank you, Steve, for all the information and the timeline.
Good evening, council. Excuse me, Carl Hanlon, Carpany Hanlon. I'm your city attorney. What I'm going to do, because I think it's important to set expectations about timing in particular and about process for you as well as for the public and the community, because this is an issue that is critically important to all of us. And you are going to be put in a very difficult position, as is the Planning Commission, to set aside maybe your personal beliefs, and you're going to be asked to look at evidence and render decisions in a quasi-judicial format. My job, part of why I'm doing this tonight and walking you through that process and for the benefit of the public, is so that everybody understands that my goal here is to have the most defensible decision possible. It doesn't do any good to have a mic drop moment and then immediately lose in court. That doesn't serve any of our interests, doesn't serve the community's interests. So with that, I'm going to walk through in a little bit more detail what Steve just described. We will be undertaking an enforcement action pursuant to the municipal code 070-010-080, and that outlines the process that we need to follow in this case. The reason you heard that it's going to be heard in front of the Planning Commission is because underneath those provisions of the code, to consider revocation of a special use permit or any other development permit, it goes back to the board that it was originally approved by. So that's why it will start at the Planning Commission. That's why tonight is not a decision point. And that's why at the close of this, I'm going to ask you, you're going to hear a lot of folks testifying. I don't want them to be mad at you because you're not engaging. It's because I am asking you not to engage so that we can produce the cleanest process possible and the most defensible outcomes we possibly can. So with that said, a couple of weeks ago, relying on data from the Deportation Data Project, which aggregated an enormous amount of data through large FOIA requests to the federal government, ensued several lawsuits to obtain and nail down that data regarding hold times in various facilities. There is data up to October of 2025. There is more ensuing litigation to try to get more data surrounding that. And so from the standpoint of the city, we're having to operate on the data that multiple lawsuits produced and FOIA requests. And that data that is most relevant to us is sort of from about March through October of 2025. Based on that, there appears to have been a violation, and so that's what triggered the process underneath the code. Early next week, a notice of violation, I'll probably refer to it as an NOV as I'm talking, will be issued to the property owner and to the GSA, outlining what we believe are violations of the terms and conditions of that special use permit. We will also set that hearing at that time because under the code, that is one of the paths we have, and we feel it's most important to get to a public hearing as quickly as possible. Hearing will be scheduled before the Planning Commission for April 28th, 2026 at 6 p.m. The sole question there is whether or not the SUP was violated. And so I want to distinguish that for your purposes and for the public's purpose, because there again, I think a lot of us have very strong feelings about this issue. I know I do. But I also know that I have to defend the decision that comes out of the Planning Commission and potentially out of you. So depending on the decision of the Planning Commission, they have really three options. They can revoke the SUP. They can find that there's insufficient evidence to revoke that SUP, or they could issue some kind of an order related to it regarding future compliance or reporting or something like that. Once that decision is entered, regardless of what it is, there is a 7-day period to appeal that decision to you as City Council. So that's why I'm asking you not to engage, as hard as it's going to be this evening, not to engage, because for us to defend that process, you need to be an impartial decision maker when or if you hear that appeal. They have 7 days to file an appeal. We would schedule that hearing before you at the next available council meeting, for which we could get it properly noticed and on the agenda. So that could be 2 weeks, that could be 3 weeks. We need to make sure that we were properly noticed. Again, because any decision that is made, we want to make sure that we can defend it as fully as possible. And we're going to talk about where those challenges might come up. After that hearing before you, you would have those same three options. You could uphold the decision of the Planning Commission, you could overturn the decision of the Planning Commission, or you could enter some type of an order modifying that SUP based on the evidence that you heard at that hearing. That's critical, and I'm saying that for the benefit of the public, that you are going to, that's where the testimony gets into the record for you to consider on what your next steps are. After that decision, whatever it is, under state statute, under what we call, you'll hear a lot of times we shorthand it to Rule 106. Colorado Rule of Civil Procedure 106 provides a mechanism whereby your decision is appealed to state district court. That appeal would focus on two primary areas of interest. One would be, did you provide procedural due process? In other words, did you follow your process to the letter in rendering whatever decision you happen to make? I am not presupposing any outcomes, I'm telling you the process. The other would be, did you act in an arbitrary and capricious manner? Which is a very high standard to overturn your decision, but areas of concern are, did you have ex parte communications? Was that the reason you based your decision on? Was your decision based on something else outside of the record? Was the decision based on your personal feelings regarding the matter and not the evidence presented at the hearing? Those are the types of things that could potentially get that decision overturned. At that point, whatever the court would rule, if they, if a party took it that far, at that point, we probably could take an enforcement action, whatever that would be in the case if you happen to revoke the SUP. It would still be subject to appeal in the state of Colorado, up to the Court of Appeals, that decision of the trial court. I should back up too and talk about a little bit about timelines. So you have 28 days to file that notice under 106. It is considered an expedited proceeding in Colorado, which means rather than waiting 18 months for a trial date, we probably would see a trial date within 60 to 90 days. The reason I'm laying this out is that there again, I want to be clear that there is no easy moment where like, oh, we're done and we can declare victory. This is a grind. It's designed that way to be a grind for the benefit of everyone, right? So at that point, depending on what the property owner and the JSA wanted to do, we might have to go back to court, try to get injunctive relief, get an order of the court, that kind of thing. We would make those battles. What I will tell you is from our research and our preparations as a law firm internally as to what to expect in this process, I will tell you that when we look at what happened in Chicago, in the Chicago suburbs, in Portland, in some of the facilities in Minnesota, we would anticipate either at the point in which we issue a notice of violation, that NOV, or the first time potentially that a negative decision was rendered, say the Planning Commission voted to revoke the SUP. that rather than engage in state court, this administration has almost immediately filed suit against the local jurisdiction in federal court. And so that battle would move into federal court. There again, we are preparing for that eventuality, regardless of what the decision is, because we want to be prepared to move quickly and effectively in that instance. It is much harder when I'm talking about the federal courts to give you a timeline. They are, you know, but the joke in law school was that a federal court judge sits at the, or God sits at the right hand of a federal court judge. They have a lot of control over the speed of their docket. And so I would like to be able to tell you what I think that timeline would be, but I just don't know. One of the battles would probably be whether or not it should be remanded back to state court, because it is a matter purely of state concern, not of federal concern over local land use jurisdiction. There's an abstention doctrine, surprisingly enough, called the Colorado River Abstention Doctrine, that might apply in this case, that would put us back in state court, which is certainly where we would prefer to be. So we know in all of those cases that there will be challenges. And I think the most challenging thing is actually what you have to do tonight, which is you're going to hear from a lot of members of your community. And I'm going to ask you not to directly engage, because I don't like to lose. And this is one of those instances where we have to get it all right. And depending on the outcome, and there again, I'm not presupposing an outcome, I'm going up against a much larger law firm than I have. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions. But there again, I wanted to set the stage for what you can expect, what the community can expect, and also the timeline of what we can expect as we move through this process. So with that, happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Carl, for this information. Very helpful. Mayor Pro Tem Solinsky, please.
Thank you. So while we're moving through this process, and potentially while this is kind of hung up in the court system, does the entity continue to operate as they have been, or are there any restrictions that would?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Councilor Zelensky. A little bit of it depends on the posture we get into. Certainly, we would ask for injunctive relief almost immediately. I don't know. The standards are slightly different in federal and state court. I would feel probably more comfortable in state court getting that injunction than I would in federal court, honestly. But that certainly would be something at the point at which it became appropriate in the process to request that relief. We would probably argue for it if it went up through the state court system at the point at which either an appeal was filed under Rule 106 in that 28-day window, or at the point where that 28-day window ran out. If no appeal had been filed, we would ask for that relief at that time for enforcement purposes. In federal court, it would probably be one of the first battles that we fought, which is whether or not it could continue to operate. That is assuming we got through a planning commission hearing and they voted to revoke. There again, I want to be very clear that I'm not giving you process and we're talking about worst cases, but I'm not presupposing an outcome. That would be probably one of the first battles that would be fought over whether or not injunctive relief to be able to close it during the pendency of that action or not. And we'll just have to see, as I think everybody has seen in the news. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. Really depends on the circuit, and I can't tell you. It would depend probably a little bit on the draw of the judge we got here in the state of Colorado, frankly.
And then I just had one other question. A lot of things have changed over the course of the 20-some years. Will P&Z, as a matter of process, be evaluating this with the codes from today, or the codes from the time it was?
Yeah, so another good question. The evaluation will be the terms and conditions of the original approval. And the critical one in this instance is hold time.
Right.
And so in the original approval, there was representations made, and it was the basis of the decision that 12-hour hold limit. That's going to be the primary lever, and that is the primary, not only the primary, but one of the only elements that the Planning Commission would be looking at underneath our code, as is in any code, those pre-existing, even, we changed the code in a major way in like 2017, 2018. And this would not be a permitted use even underneath the special use permit under today's code. Our code acknowledges, if you take this particular use out of the equation, that if you had received a development permit prior to that code change, that you don't lose that development permit unless you violate the terms of it or you abandon. And so that's
That
why
does.
that's why this work from the deportation project is so incredibly important, because quite frankly, we don't have the resources to be able to extricate that information on our own.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Schmal.
Have we received a formal complaint that has begun the legal process here? Or is this just based on the data that we've seen from Project Deportation or wherever that came
From the FOIA request. Anytime that we have received innumerable complaints, but beyond that, it's incumbent on us, once we discover that information, to act on it, which is really what I was doing. That concern is one that's a material term to that permit, and so I dug into the data and tried to sort through it.
So we're obligated to treat it as though it's a formal complaint.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand, I always get tripped up on this quasi judicial, as you know. But if that's the case, then Carl, hasn't this process already begun? And we probably shouldn't even take public comment?
Well, that is a decision for you guys that respectfully say you probably shouldn't make. But one of the reasons I wanted to do this publicly is that I could have sent you a memo and said, here's the process and here's what's going to happen, and don't ever put it on an agenda. One of the ways to protect against that is that what you were going to hear today is, while not part of that record, is something that is publicly available and everybody will be able to see. And that's why I don't want to limit these guys' ability to speak. And I'm trying to find a way to navigate that to protect that process as much as I possibly can. So that's why I did the whole spiel that I just did. There is some risk there, but I think it is a risk worth taking.
Counselor Weimer.
Thank you, Carl. We're looking at a potentially years-long process here.
Yes.
Beyond tonight, after tonight, should anyone up here at the dais be approached at the grocery store, at the community center, at the car wash, at the soccer pitch, and the expectation is that we engage, we provide an update, we respond, we either support or any sort of other reaction, right? What do you advise that we do?
I would advise what I do anytime you're engaging in a land use hearing, which is to be polite and to say, Steve, your opinion is incredibly important to the city, and I want to make sure that it's included in the record, and I want to make sure that I can sit to make that decision. And so I would ask you to provide either written or public comment at the Planning Commission meeting, and if it comes before council, to provide that then as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very important. Thank you. Counselor Townsley.
Shut me down if this is an inappropriate question. Do we have data? I've seen the data, the plot data that says, okay, here's 12 hours, here's what happened after that 12 hours. Do we have data that would give us any idea of what would happen if this facility was closed down and people that were at this facility were taken to another facility, as to whether or not we're putting them in a worse position or a better position? Or can we get that?
I mean, I don't have that data, and potentially maybe that's something that in response and at a hearing, either GSA or the property owner would provide to us, but we don't have any way to assess that.
There's nothing we can do to request that, so we'd have some idea.
I mean, we can request that. I don't know that it's actually germane to the decision of whether or not the holds exceeded the special use permit timeline. I mean, it may go to whether or not you wanted to modify the special use permit, and so certainly we could ask for that information. I can see where it could fit into that equation, so we could certainly ask for that information.
Thanks. One other quick question. Between now and March 23rd, if that's when the sprinklers are being redone and whatnot, is the facility still being used?
And I think you're gonna hear a lot of testimony on this. It's very hard to get information on timing and the use of that facility. I don't think if our fire marshal believed that they weren't functional, he absolutely would have red tagged that building.
Okay.
And keeping in mind that that condition is throughout 100 Midland. That is an integrated fire suppression system. So it's in every business out there. This is really just a timeout on the age of the sprinklers. And so, like I said, I should also mention that the reason why, from our perspective, we think the appropriate place to look is the SUP is a red tag is temporary, right? You can correct the condition, even if that were the case. And what I think the community wants to look at, and I think what we want to look at is this operating in the way that was represented to us 23 years ago.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Smith.
Thank you. And thank you both for very clear and extensively researched background on this. I have a couple of questions on procedure that I think are safe to ask without compromising anything, and then maybe a more qualitative question. If indeed, sorry, looks like this is headed to a planning and zoning hearing.
It is.
Will that include opportunity for general public to comment?
Absolutely. That's why I said this is the date and the time, because I want to make sure everybody has the date and time.
And if the decision of that body is appealed, so it goes to the next potential opportunity for relief, which is this city council, does that deliberation by city council have to rely only on the record from the planning and zoning meeting, or is that another opportunity for general public comment?
Oh, there would absolutely be public comment. There always is. You would be looking in part, I mean, primarily you'd be looking at the record in terms of the materials that were provided and the prior testimony, but certainly you would be taking additional public testimony as well.
Okay, thank you. At the planning and zoning decision point, or after the planning and zoning reaches a conclusion, after that hearing, depending on which way they decide, who has opportunity to appeal?
That's actually a very good and insightful question. We don't define in the code specifically what an interested party is, but that's the language that we use. We have relied on sort of the case law that is around the Rule 106 actions as to what an interested party is. It's not perfectly clear. I will be honest. Welcome to the law, and why my job sometimes is, you always hear me say, well, maybe. Primarily, it would be someone who has an interest, most often a property interest, that is affected by the decision, that could appeal that. On rare occasions, we have appealed as staff on decisions of the Planning Commission to the council, and so I wouldn't rule that out as well.
If this isn't getting too far out on the thin ice on an 80-degree day, is it possible for someone other than city staff, if the decision goes a way that someone in the public doesn't like it, is there anybody out there who could appeal?
I think what my answer to that would be is that I don't want to create a series of what ifs or a possibility I think we would take a look at each one of those individually, and if we believed it fit within that, the legal framework of interested party. I mean, I'm a firm believer that you try to make that as broad as possible, personally. And since I'd be one of the ones having to think about it, I guess that's what I would say, is that I believe in public processes.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I deliberately was kind of roundabout about asking that question for that reason. I don't want to try to pretend scenarios and
Right.
thus compromise or predict anything. And that in turn is couched in my full embrace of your reminder that every single step of this process needs to be done meticulously
Yes.
in order to be fair to everybody and in order to get a proper decision ultimately. So I want to be over cautious about how we ask questions even. And including my final question, which is really just a reprise of Councilor Schmall's question. Shouldn't we err on the side of that caution about not contaminating the process by not having a public hearing tonight?
You're not having a public hearing. And what I would say is that every single one of the people in this room could have stood up at citizens appearing before council and offered the same testimony in front of you. The fact that it is simply on the agenda in a different place on the agenda does not change the fact that as the elected representatives of the city of Glenwood Springs, any citizen has their 3 minutes to come up here and talk to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I said that was the last question. There is a corollary question. We continue to receive letters,
Right.
email messages and such relayed through the city clerk or sent to us directly sometimes. Should we be not reading those?
I think it's fine if you read them. They're going to go in. All of that is going to be amassed in the public record that Ryan and Trent and his team will be putting together. Because there again, I am going to try to build the most comprehensive record of this I possibly can. Because I know whatever the outcome, I'm going to have to defend it, and I want to make sure that we get it right.
Read but don't respond.
Read but don't respond. That is absolutely, thank you, Councilor Weimer. And there again, for the public's benefit, and maybe the press's benefit if they're here or they're online, don't take that as disinterest in what you have to say.
Right.
Take that as it's part of the process. And frankly, from my standpoint, I would love to see you, come into one of those hearings and provide your views.
Thank you very much. That was detail about detail. Appreciate the patient responses.
Thank you, Councilor Schmall, please.
I'm not going to belabor it.
Yeah, I understand your where you're at, and
From both sides, the caution from both sides, because should we listen to a whole lot of things that are not really coming into evidence in writing, the argument can be made that we've been unduly influenced. And the caution needs to go both ways, I think.
without question, and that's why I said this is not without risk. But in my estimation, because your citizens always have the opportunity to send you an email, they always have an opportunity to stand up at public comment. We're simply putting it all together in one place. It's also why the NOV is going to be issued next week and wasn't issued today, in terms of just timing.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski, please.
So what I have is more of a statement than a question. Is that acceptable this time?
See for election.
All right, so I don't know if I was the only one, but I was one of the people that asked that we have a bit of a public statement made on this topic in the interest of transparency and also to reassure all of the concerned people that nobody's asleep on this topic, that, but there's a process that must be followed. I don't want the fact that I asked for this to be on the regular agenda to suppress the voice of the people, which is why I'm not uncomfortable with hearing public comment at this time. I I have a very high level of responsibility to be responsive to the concerns brought before us. And so I see this as part of that process. And so that's why I'm like, I know that I can stick to the rules and still listen to what people have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Any other questions to the staff at this point? Okay, we'll see none. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Steve, again, for your information and laying it out, how it happened and what needs to happen or will happen. I'm going to open the public comment portion here shortly, but I just want to make it understood that we will not engage in a discussion. We will absolutely hear you. You are going to be part of the record. It's all recorded. So say what you have to. You have 3 minutes. I will cut you off. I don't like doing it, but I will. There's a lot of you here. You have 3 minutes. And when we're done, we'll just say thank you and we'll say goodbye. We're not going to engage, just so you guys know. This is too high stakes to not do it right. So with that, I will open the public portion and we'll start with Ashley Stahl. And as always, please state your name and whether you live in city limits or not.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Stahl and I'm a homeowner here in Glenwood Springs. Steve, last week you sent me an email apologizing for summarily dismissing my concerns about the ICE detention facility. For weeks, I've brought city staff and this council documentation. Building code violations, expired certificates, federal detention data. You've had everything you've needed to act, and until now you've dismissed it. You've dismissed your own citizens until the Colorado Times Recorder published it, until 32 state lawmakers demanded answers. Only then did you apologize. Only then did you act. This is not an oversight. This is a cover-up that collapsed under scrutiny. You confirmed that ICE violated 12-hour detention limits in its special use permit. That triggers mandatory revocation proceedings, as we just heard. On February 26th, one day after your inspection documented broken emergency lighting and untested sprinklers, a man suffered a medical emergency that required hospitalization out of that facility. You knew the space was unsafe and you continue to allow detention to occur anyways, even though you could red tag the facility, as we heard. Yesterday's Aspen Daily News quoted you, Carl, saying that any reasonable person would have required inspections in 2003. And I've gotten to know you a little bit. I believe you're a good person who cares about this community, but you were city attorney in 2003. You were present at the planning and zoning meeting that approved this permit. If any reasonable person would have required inspections, why didn't you? You had the authority then, and you have the authority now. Good people can make bad decisions, and that was a bad decision that had 21 years of consequences. Core records also reveal that last year, HSI sent a Spear intelligence bulletin to our police department, treating residents asking basic questions about this building as suspicious activity worthy of surveillance. You weren't just ignoring this facility, you've been actively helping ICE monitor your own citizens. Why don't you take your own citizens seriously? When ICE wants something, you bend over backwards to give it to them, but when we demand accountability, you dismiss us until the media forces your hand. So what I'm going to ask you to do tonight is to red tag this and condemn suites 110 and 210. You have the authority to do it. Oh, who cares if it's a short-term solution? We can do both. We can red tag this facility and stop detentions immediately. Also, we don't have to wait until April to schedule till late April. We can schedule this sooner. We should be getting this taken care of as fast as possible. There are people being held in there in unsafe conditions. Your admission last week creates legal liability. You can't claim you didn't know anymore. You have the authority. The city has had it for 21 years, and the only question is whether you'll use it. If you don't act tonight, every family torn apart in this moment is a choice you made. Every person detained in that unsafe facility is your responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. May Gray, please. Please state your name and whether you live in the city limits or not.
My name is May Gray, and I currently live in Carbondale, Colorado.
Thank
So
you.
I wanted to come up here and tell you that this is something, the fact is that we are getting national attention, and all of the little ICE facilities that are now scattered through Colorado have attention. And that all started here because of this ICE facility. So that makes you all the leaders in marking. What are you going to do? How are you going to set a precedent? Because you will be the leaders amongst the rest of Colorado, and they will look to what you do. And I would like to mark that I know that we have incredible leadership here in Glenwood Springs. And we are looking for that leadership to be stable on. You have citizens who are showing up here to be a part of your leadership. And we're coming and speaking to you in good faith. And I'm asking that you please take our good faith and actually lead us forward in a positive direction. This is about compassion. We all know, yes, that in 2003, this is not about a mic drop. We don't want you to do a mic drop. But yes, the conditions in 2003 were way different. We are underneath a different administration with different rules, different laws, different things that they are now trying to accomplish. This is no longer about 9/11. This is about kidnapping our neighbors, our friends, our family, and putting them in a space that isn't even where they're supposed to remain. This is about telling your people that you care for them. Immigrants or not, they are humans. They are people who will just need your compassion, and it is on your shoulders to show that. Good leaders have compassion and understand what their neighbor needs. I appreciate your time. Thank you for letting us speak. We are very thankful. And you guys keep doing the great job that you're doing. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Sally Boughton. Please state your name and whether you live in city limits or not.
Hi, I'm Sally Boughton. I live outside of city limits, but I consider Glenwood to be part of my community. Just quickly before I read my prepared statement, in response to 2 points brought up by the city manager, I-3 detention requires annual inspections of life safety infrastructure. There's no evidence that those inspections have been completed over 20 years. It also appears that the city is expecting the facility to meet Group B code for general office use, not Group I-3 code for detention use, which is more stringent and takes precedent. I urge the council to investigate these points further. Immigration enforcement here doesn't look like it does in Chicago or Minneapolis. Here it is quiet, it is efficient, and evidence indicates that it is aided by county and city law enforcement. At the last meeting, we were told to take all concerns about SPEAR over to the county, but given the Glenwood Police Chief signed the SPEAR MOU in July of 2025, and the city hasn't shown evidence of a formal withdrawal from SPEAR since, it does appear that Glenwood Springs is currently a member of SPEAR, and that's a problem. As part of their activities, SPEAR consolidates and shares data from interactions with the public, traffic stops, 911 calls, etc., with every other member. That includes HSI, a department of ICE. Giving HSI the keys to our local residents' information exposes that information to all of ICE, including enforcement and removal operations. This data sharing appears to violate Colorado law, and it is law for good reason. I don't want to live in a community where someone witnessing a crime is scared to report it because they know it might mean the end of everything they've worked for over the last 20 years. I don't want to live in a community where kids learn it's not safe to call the police for help because when they saw their mother do just that, she was taken from them. This is not hypothetical. These things are happening in our community. That mom who called 911 for help was treated like a violent criminal, even though she's not. She was taken by ICE to the Midland Detention Center. She was chained at her feet, waist, and hands and locked in a large cell with cement benches and a toilet in the corner separated by a partial divider. She describes the room as freezing, much colder than the rest of the building. When she told an agent she was cold, he threw her some dirty, foul-smelling blankets. After hours alone in the cell, the agent returned, replaced her full restraints, loaded her into a transport van and took her to Geo. She is now in her home country, separated from her children, all because she trusted local police department to do their job. This family was torn apart because of her local PD's membership in SPEAR. This is just one story. How many more have yet to be uncovered? As a mother, I cannot imagine anything more painful than being separated from my child. The city, in its rush to correct what you call an administrative oversight, but what I call 20 years of negligence, is actively facilitating the separation of parents from their children. ICE under this administration has shown a blatant disregard for the Constitution, for due process, for human dignity, for human life.
And we're at 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Emma Ross.
Emma Ross here. Mayor, Ms. Lopez actually has to get out sooner. If I could switch order with her, I believe that Ms. Lopez is next.
That'd be fine. Actually, there's 2 more down, but that's okay. Please come forward, state your name and whether you live in city limits or not.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Jasenia Lopez and I live within city limits here in Glenwood Springs.
Thank you.
The community wants ICE out. The community wants to dissolve SPEAR, and the community wants to stop AI surveillance. The community wants our local leaders to make the right decision and fight for their people. I'm here today to share my dissatisfaction and concern with you about the permit regarding the ICE Center located at 100 Midland Avenue and the compliance and aid our local law enforcement has offered to ICE processes. Instead of reinstating the building's permit, it would be in your best interest to use your position of power to safeguard our city and say, no, we do not want to work with ICE and deny their permit. If a permit is issued for 100 Midland Avenue, the city of Glenwood Springs could be held liable for violating state law. Colorado law HB 23-1100 prohibits state and local governments from entering into or renewing contracts with federal agencies to house people for civil immigration purposes. If you city council members reinstate 100 Midland Avenue, serious legal consequences may follow. A simple solution would be to, again, not reinstate the permit and issue resolutions to the city of Glenwood Springs stating what and what not you will be doing to ensure the safety and priority of your local members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we go back to Emma Ross, please.
Mayor.
Please state your name and whether you live in city limits or not.
Hi. My name is Emma Ross. I am a Basalt resident, and the actions that happen here affect all of us in the Valley. I am grateful to have an opportunity to address you tonight. The issue that I want to raise is separate from but related to the special use permit at 100 Midland Avenue. And that is what Ms. Boughton touched on, which is the SPEAR initiative. Now, the SPEAR initiative is an information sharing agreement between local law enforcement, including the Glenwood Springs Police Department and the Garfield County Sheriff, with federal civil immigration enforcement, including ICE. And in fact, the police chief of Glenwood Springs signed that memorandum of understanding as a member of the SPEAR response group on July 25th of 2025. To the best of my knowledge, the Glenwood Springs City Council did not approve that agreement before it was signed. And there are two problems with that. The first is a procedural problem. Glenwood Springs and any entity under the city cannot enter into an intergovernmental agency agreement without approval of the legislative body under Colorado substantive law and under the Colorado Constitution. That legislative body is Glenwood Springs Town Council. But there's also a substantive problem, which is that even if that agreement had been approved by Glenwood Springs City Council, that would violate substantive Colorado law that says any local entity shall not share non-public information to aid civil immigration enforcement. And the story that Ms. Boughton shared is exactly why. Members of our community should be able to call 911 when someone's in labor, when someone is hurt, when their child is missing, without fear of immigration enforcement as a result of that. Now, every violation of that statute carries a fine of up to $50,000 per violation. And so the issue that I want to raise is a fiscal one. Every time our first responders actually respond to an emergency or make a traffic stop and share information with ICE, that conduct could be fined up to $50,000 per violation. And this is not theoretical. Several weeks ago, the Garfield Sheriff was served with a cease and desist letter by someone who is running for Attorney General in the state of Colorado. And the Attorney General is the body, is the person who has the ability to levy that $50,000 fine per violation. So if one assumes just one traffic stop.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thanks for being in Glenwood tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Amy Hausman, please. Please state your name and whether you live in city limits.
My name is Amy Hausman, and I do live in the city limits. And I used to work for the city of Glenwood Springs. Until 2 months ago, I actually lived in West Glenwood. And I lived there for about 10 years before just moving into downtown. I was really surprised about 2 years ago to learn that there was an ICE facility basically right in my backyard when I lived in West Glenwood. Well, I still lived in West Glenwood. With our population, that's about 1/3 Latino. I do not believe that allowing this facility to continue to operate here is in our community's best interest. It helps to instill fear in a significant portion of our workers, neighbors, friends, and fellow residents. I personally know people in our community who are terrified that they or their loved one could be picked up and held in that facility with no notice given to their family, simply disappeared. Even if they're released a short time later, the fear is still very real. In addition to it operating without a valid certificate of occupancy for many years, obviously times have changed, and according to recent reporting, many more people have been held there recently, particularly this past year, I guess. If they have held people there longer than for allowed, then I believe, and that, well, it's a clear violation if they have done that, and it's been reported that they have, then their license to operate should not be renewed. Their license, the recent refusal also to allow a state representative access to the facility. I don't know if there was just nobody there to answer the door or respond to him calling and knocking and ringing the bell. But the fact that he was not allowed access even strengthens my resolve in that their license should not be renewed if there's a way to not do it. I understand that this could be a really long and challenging process, as Carl explained. And I hope that that's not a reason for the city council and for our town to take the easy way out and simply not renew simply renew their CO, to not have to go through a long court battle. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hannah Sagao, I don't know. Saga, thank you. Please state your name and whether you live in city limits.
Hi, my name is Hannah Sago, and I live in Glenwood Springs in city limits.
Thank you.
And I'm here to urge you to say no to any form of collaboration with federal immigration authorities, not only for the well-being of our community members, but also in compliance with state law. I appreciate that council and staff are already taking community concerns into account on this issue and the various ways it's manifesting in our community. I have 3 asks for council and the city. Revoke the special use permit for the ICE detention facility at 100 Midland and immediately shut it down. Formally withdraw the Glenwood Springs Police Department from SPEAR and pass a binding resolution that commits to following state law and prohibits any information sharing or other collaboration with federal immigration authorities. On 100 Midland, I was horrified, like many others here, to learn that there's a detention facility in my community that's operated without a valid permit for 20 years and in violation of its original special use permit. I appreciate the city's efforts to swiftly investigate the facility and commit to enforcement. And given that they have violated their special use permit by holding people there for longer than 12 hours in unsafe conditions and cruel conditions, as others have mentioned, I urge the city to revoke their permit and immediately shut it down, even if the revocation is challenged in court. The city should also consider the legal risks under state law of reissuing this permit, as Yesenia mentioned. Failing to revoke the permit risks putting the city in violation of this law by contracting with an immigration detention facility. Beyond the legal and permitting concerns, this facility simply goes against our community's values. It's being used to detain members of our community, not violent criminals, and it doesn't belong in Glenwood Springs. On SPEAR, I want to know, as others have mentioned, why the Glenwood Springs Police Department signed an MOU to join a task force with federal immigration authorities without authorization from council. You know, it's incumbent on us, once we have information, to act on it. First responders like the Glenwood Springs Police already have a hard job to do, and this agreement may have been entered into without an understanding of what it was, but now that you're aware of it, it's incumbent upon you to act. And I urge you to immediately withdraw from SPEAR, prohibit any collaboration or information sharing between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities. And this extends to potential data sharing from the flock cameras that may flow from local law enforcement to immigration authorities through this task force. As others have mentioned, this creates a clear safety risk for members of our community. By allowing this collaboration, you're creating an environment where undocumented people are afraid to call on law enforcement, even when they are in danger. It's a moral issue. Both of these are moral issues, but it's also a liability issue for the city. If the city and local law enforcement continue to collaborate and enable ICE, there could be significant legal consequences under state law. I urge the city to take strong and immediate steps to end all collaboration with any federal immigration authorities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. Aaron Anderson.
Hi, my name is Erin Anderson. I use they, them pronouns, and I live in Glenwood. I came and spoke last week, and I want to stress right now what a privilege it is to be able to come and be at City Council, to feel safe enough to stand up and speak and share stories, and have the ability to leave your house and wrangle childcare and like physically get yourself here. We can't make comments online. To physically come here is a privilege. The repression that the people who have brought this, we are hearing thank yous from the people around, from the citizens for bringing this to everyone's attention. And simultaneously, we are learning of different conversations happening between Homeland Security investigators and our city government about activist groups. And today, the Garfield County Sheriff showed up at my home. My children were home after school. We were getting ready to come here and serve my partner with a cease and desist. I want to read part of this to you to stress the importance of why my local government needs to be transparent and take ownership and like what the city needs to be doing here. This building houses lawfully licensed businesses that work in the general public and who depend upon the association to keep and maintain the building. This building is not in violation of any order of the city or other government agency. The building has been inspected every year for fire safety and has obtained a report as recently as October of 2025 that the building passed the fire inspection. The sprinkler heads are being tested as required, and we have no reason to believe that they will not pass such test. That directly contradicts what we're hearing. This is a cease and desist that threatens trespass, a criminal thing. And the things that are alleged in here are not us. That is the thing, is that it is a privilege for me and my partner and my community to stand up and put our name on work. I love that somebody had the balls to go and talk to people over there. It wasn't us. And yet the repression is coming from our sheriff. It looks like Steve Boyd is CC'd on this cease and desist. And the repression that is putting on the impacted community and everybody who is trying to stand up and support and call accountability to this is unacceptable. This is outrageous. My children are afraid to answer the door. And I don't know if you've ever had the cops come and knock on your door. It does not feel good. And my address is on this paper that ICE was given. Like, what does that mean for impacted families to have the risk of having a cease and desist with your name and address, incorrectly identifying you, given to ICE and the homeowners association in the city? The responsibility that y'all have to like do this right is huge, and the amount of risk and harm it is bringing to the people who are impacted by this.
Here's your 3 minutes.
Huge.
Thank you very
I
much.
appreciate you all.
Christine Flores, that's what that says. Thank you.
¿Tienen disponible un intérprete para que pueda dar mi comentario en español?
How are we doing with that?
I don't have an interpreter, but
I don't
Okay.
think we have anybody here.
Está bien. That's okay, because I also speak English, but I just wanted to point out that that's an issue as well. That,
Could you please state your name quick and whether
Yes,
you live in
I
city limits
will.
or not?
yes, my name is Cristina Flores. I live within Glenwood city limits.
Thank you.
And as I just pointed out, I think it is unfortunate that there is not always access for our bilingual, our Spanish-speaking community, especially on an issue that so deeply, predominantly affects us, because we look a certain way, because we can't take our skin off, because we don't always want to take our tongue off and speak in the dominant language. I had a lot to say to you, and after just listening to the process, I think I want to refrain from sharing a lot of that, and we'll just
stress that I've known about 100 Midland Ave for a couple of years now. I used to be an immigration paralegal. I knowingly encouraged people to attend their check-in appointments, not aware that they could potentially be detained for more than 12 hours, really not aware that they could be detained at all. In fact, I encouraged somebody who entered as an undocumented and unaccompanied minor to attend an appointment. I am a part of our Latino community. I am a part of our immigrant community. I am continuously remiss to see that there are signs that our institutions do not always support us the same way that they support purportedly all citizens. Listening to the care that our city attorney took to explain the process and the due process and how careful we need to be about evidence and what we hear and what we don't hear just makes me want to scream when I think about the lack of due process that immigrants are given. When I think about the fact that we are considered citizens and they are considered aliens, and once they end up being in one temporary detainment center and sent to another detainment center, they don't really have a name anymore. They have an alien number. I don't know that all of this makes sense. It's still very emotional and probably more emotional than what I wish to say. But what I just wish to say is that I hope that you approach this con mucho coraje y mucho corazón for all of your citizens as you make the decision about the violations of the special use permit.
Thank you very much. Is it Eli or Eli? There you go. Alpern, please. Please state your name and whether you live in city limits or not.
Hi, I'm Eli Alpern. I live in the valley, but not in city limits.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all for being here and listening to us. I just want to take a moment to like zoom out of this room and think about this as a moment in history and a moment in time. And there's so much going on right now. And yeah, everything that's happened with ICE this last year and in Minnesota, and I'm sure we've all seen horrible videos, and if you haven't, you're not paying attention, but I assume we all have. And oh yeah, it's so heavy for me, just paying attention with a little empathy, but I can't imagine how scary and heavy it is for the Latino community here in our valley, which is so essential and important to our community. Yeah, ICE is not keeping anybody safe. I believe wherever they go, violence happens. They wear masks, they're in unmarked vehicles, they're violent. I don't think they go through very much training. They're armed and emboldened. And with all this going on, I feel powerless so much. This was a moment of potential for me to come exercise a little bit of power, to encourage you all to exercise what seems to be actual power to me. We're still within a system, and I can't believe we're talking about this place and we're talking about life and death issues in this facility, and we're talking about sprinkler heads, which are important for safety, but talking about sprinkler heads in the context of what else is happening in these rooms and what's happening to innocent people taken off the streets, taken from their families, and people losing their lives. Yeah, white people, allies, what happened in Minnesota, but the countless uncounted people that don't look like me. That fear is already in this valley, but I don't want it to get worse, and I don't want ICE to have a foothold in this valley, in this community, and have a piece of infrastructure. And through whatever power you all have, I encourage you to please keep ICE out for the entire valley. And it seems that your power is limited to certain processes, but please.
And there's your 3 minutes. Thank you very much for your comments. This actually concludes our names on the sign-up sheet for tonight. Is there anybody else here that would like to come forward? Please state your name and whether you live in city limits or not.
Hi, I'm Tracy Zabel. I live in Carbondale. I might go over, so just cut me off. Nice to see you on this warm March day. It's frustrating knowing that record-breaking high temperatures are coming our way this weekend. I am so tired of living in historic times. I know that the cruelness we are seeing now is really not anything new, but I think our ability to connect the dots of what's happening and witness it is historic, and hopefully our response can also be historic in our resistance too. I'm going to read to you from the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. And I understand that this was written by men who came to settle this country by stealing the land and murdering people and likely using slaves. Slavery was legal at the time. Just because something is legal doesn't make it just. I saw today that the president is requesting an additional $200 billion for the war in Iran. He's also requested an additional $150 billion for ICE. These numbers are astronomical and hard to understand. And how do they affect us? Because the US military is one of the largest institutional emitters of carbon, which affects climate change, which we're seeing with these historic record-breaking temperatures, with sunlight having to close on Sunday, with us being in fear of how we're gonna get out of the valley if wildfires are raging this summer. So what does this have to do with ICE, mass surveillance with AI and SPEAR? It comes down to complying in advance. We should not comply in advance with authoritarianism or fascism. So I ask that you be brave. I have hope in you and faith in you that we do not comply in advance. We know in our bones that what we are witnessing is wrong. If you do not, I invite you to confront the supremacy that allows you to hold to justify these things. And so my ask is to do what you can to get ICE out of our community. Do not renew the lease. Do not approve AI-driven mass surveillance cameras like Flock, and shut down or withdraw from the SPEAR task force. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your comments. Anybody else here tonight, please come forward. Please also state your name and whether you live in city limits or not. You'll get there.
Eleanor Yeager. I live outside of Glenwood city limits.
Thank you.
I'm in Glenwood. I don't have anything prepared. I have to say I've lived in many jurisdictions in my long life and worked for courts and jails and military. And this whole, aside from the ICE issue, which is a hot topic, I would say if a jurisdiction did not give someone a CO, they would not go back to the initial date of application or supposed issuance. They would make people comply with the current standards. In most cases, I don't know the statutes here. I don't know that. On top of that, if there's any reason to believe that a special use permit has been violated, that cease and desist order would go out in a hot minute. I fear that part of this not happening is because of the fear of the strength of the federal government's judicial system. And that concerns me. And I get the fear. I get that. We don't have the funds here to fight the big dogs. But, you know, I think you're missing an opportunity to not lower the hammer on this facility, especially with the heat of citizens' feelings about ICE. When I worked in jails, law enforcement agencies did work with ICE, but only with a judicial order. None of this Nazi nonsense that's going on now. You have to have a judicial order to hold someone in a jail, to be transferred to a federal facility. That's all gone by the wayside. But that's the bigger picture. The focus picture is, why isn't the hammer going down on these guys for violating a special use permit? And why are we not going back and saying, you have to comply with current standards? I know if it was my residents, they'd make me comply with current standards, no matter whose fault it was that the CO didn't get issued. So that's all. Not prepared. My 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you for your 2 cents. Anybody else? Okay, please come forward. State your name and whether you live in city limits, please, for me.
Hello, thank you all for allowing us to speak this evening. My name is Julie Bommersbach, and I do not live within Glenwood city limits. Like many others in our community, in this room, I recently learned of 100 Midland Avenue. I recently learned of the Spear Task Force, recently learned of the flock cameras throughout our valley. Like many others, I'm shocked, horrified, very angry about the existence of the detention facility, the violations of personal privacy that are happening every day while we're on the road, on any corner you look on now. Who knows whether there's a camera watching you? And who knows who's looking at that data? Who knows what kinds of cameras there are? This is all deeply, deeply disturbing. I had prepared comments and I've been rewriting them as I've been listening throughout the evening. So forgive me if it's a little disjointed here. But the recent reports and recent information has made it clear that violations are happening. Violations of federal policy, violations of municipal policy. With maximum hold times being violated, and documented instances of this happening, I urge City Council to enforce its policies, to do its due diligence in the upcoming procedures. I urge City Council, based upon these documented special use permit violations, to revoke the special use permit, and to close the detention facility operating at 100 Midland Avenue. I urge City Council to formally withdraw from the Spear Task Force, to revoke the unauthorized signatures, to audit the data, and to dissolve their participation, to dissolve the task force. As a City Council, I urge you to represent your constituents, both in this room, throughout the community, those who feel privileged and safe enough to come and speak this evening in instances like this, and those who do not feel safe and privileged enough to come and speak in front of you. I urge you to represent your constituents and to make legislative decisions for the good of the community, which is your stated job. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, last call. Anybody else? Okay, you'll see none. Is anybody online? This is a formal listening session, so I'll invite online people to this one, but I see no hand going up. So we'll close the public portion of item 8 tonight. And like I said last time, just want to say thank you for all of you for being here. And I, for one, I can't speak for the rest, but I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And I feel like I should be careful what I say because of where I'm sitting, but I agree with most of what I heard. So if I wasn't sitting here, I'd be on your side, but I'm sitting here, so I can't. So anyway, so thank you for being here. We're not going to respond to any of it. There will be a process that we're going to engage here in and just follow the process. This is a due process that we got to do, public process. So thank you very much. Moving on, item 10, ordinance 2026. Sure, I thought I could just announce it. Then everybody has to get ready. Everybody has to get ready and, you know. All right. Okay, item 10, ordinance 2026-04, planning file. ComDef. Tell me I'm right.
No, you're
Oh, I'm right. Yeah, ComDef 00015-2026 Qualified Fire Resilience Code, second reading.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. Trent High with Community Development. Just following up from the meeting February 19th. If you remember correctly, we were going to adopt this code by reference and therefore had some additional notification requirements. Those have been fulfilled. So we do want to open up this item for public comment tonight, but I'm also happy to answer any additional questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Trent, back to us. Any questions to staff about the second reading? Okay, we'll see none. Anybody from the public like to come forward on the wildfire resilience code? No, they all left. Look at that. Okay, we'll close the public portion on that as well.
When you make a motion on this ordinance, whoever makes the motion, would you read the entire title and the motion?
Sure.
Thanks.
So back to council, entertaining a motion in item 10. Mayor Pro Tem Salinsky.
I move to approve ordinance 2026-04, planning file ComDev 00015-2026, Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code on its second reading.
Okay, motion to approve. Looking for a second. Council Townsley?
Second it.
Motion is second. Any discussion? See none, call for the question.
It passes 6-0.
Thank you, Ryan. That was it for tonight. Since the other one's been continued, last item, moving into council comments, start on my right tonight. Yep. Start with Councilor Smith.
Thank you.
There you go.
I have 9 topics. Mercifully, I'm going to highlight 3. And really do have 9 here.
I so appreciate that. I'm sorry. I had a very human moment. All of that, like, poker face.
I'll highlight 3 for now.
In eloquence.
And one is that, last time we met, we heard a fairly brief and frankly modest report on a personnel work culture award that the city received, and we all thought that was really cool. We said nice things, but I learned more detail about it since then, and it's even more remarkable than I thought. And just wanted to comment that it wasn't simply a certificate that came in from some nomination. This is something that's been going on for a year, working department by department and through all the employees, to survey employees, to learn techniques for better communication. A very extensive process that ended up with this award. So it's just that much more worth celebrating, I think. The recent almost every meeting recently has had some appointment or reappointment of members to advisory boards and commissions. And correspondingly, there are some people who are finishing their terms or otherwise not re-upping. And as far as I can tell, we don't have a deliberate format for expressing appreciation to departing people serving on those commissions. And I suggest that we cook one up. Maybe it's as simple as a paper letter, signed by all the city council members, or in some fashion, tangibly taking a moment to appreciate the many volunteer hours that goes in over 3 years of service from some really expert members of the community. So I'd suggest that we either administratively or maybe discuss in a work session how to be more deliberate about thanking people. And 5.5 months ago, we had a work session with this council to talk about council meeting protocols in several different ways of propriety, of respect, of communications. And that discussion narrowed down, at least initially, to consideration of a policy regarding remote attendance at city council meetings. And I don't think we've taken that up since, and it seems that we ought to.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit on me. A few things have come up between then and now. So that's on. I was working on a draft and some of the input that Councilor Kansley had given me. So we'll try to get that on in the next couple of meetings. It's just me having it slide down the list on y'all were getting along and nobody was yelling at me. So
We heard tonight of all nights how big your workload is. It just seemed like a nice thing to kind of have done in case it comes up again. So thank you, appreciate that. And thank you in general.
Thank you. Councilor Weimer,
Good.
Councilor Townsley. Sure, push the button.
Am I allowed to ask a question about something that's gone on here
sure.
with you guys?
Yeah, no, if we can't answer that.
Okay.
Say that.
The thing that kept coming up, the spear piece, are we part of that? Are we not part of that? What's the actual?
Yeah,
on with that?
we did sign an IGA, the chief did sign an IGA on that. I think Steve and I really had talked about trying to bring that back for discussion with you guys at the next meeting, trying to bite off pieces at a time. So I think that's, I'd rather give you more background on it, get it to you here for the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And how are we coming on that remote attendance thing? The other thing, I actually do have something that I wanted.
You know, if I can talk for 8 more minutes, it will be much
No,
more
no,
effective. for
no,
me.
No,
You know, this is, I don't know if anybody knows, but the three of us that are new here have been here for a year now. Somebody asked me over at the club the other day, you know, they said, how do you like it? What are you guys doing? Do you feel like you're making any difference or anything else like that? And you know, typically my answer to that is I'm enjoying it. I like the people I work with. I think we've got a good city staff. It's generally a very positive thing on there. So I just want to say thanks to the people that have welcomed us on here. Thanks to our city staff and everybody that's been here. Probably somebody's figured out by now that I'm more a proponent of small government, less spending, less doing of everything. The one thing that I would kind of like to see, and this is just me, this is not speaking for council, but just as we go forward, I'm going to try to keep this under 8 minutes. You guys are not going to have any time. Is it seems like there's and this is all a new learning experience for me, but it seems like a lot of people come up to us and it's usually a lot of questions that are, okay, we need money for this, we need money for that, we need money for this. In my way of thinking, there's some personal responsibility that's being given up when people come to us and say, will you solve all of our problems? And I don't know that we occasionally should not go back to people and go, your circumstances are a lot to do with your own making. There's no mandate that says you have to live in Glenwood Springs. If you don't like our speed limits, there's states you can go to Montana and drive as fast as you want. If you don't like our codes, if you don't like this, you can go somewhere else. And I think that when we sit up here, somebody says, okay, here's a problem. And we go, okay, let's try to figure out how to solve that problem. And when one of the things I was thinking about is when I had kids, I've still got kids actually, I haven't gotten rid of them, but they would come to me all the time and say, I've got this problem, and they would look at me to solve it. And the easier thing was just to solve their problem for them. But as I look back at it and thought about it at the time, if I solve their problem, then I'm not helping them to learn how to solve their problems. I'm not getting them to learn responsibility. And so I think I would really like to start looking at some of these decisions and going, are we really helping our people that are coming before us? Or are we, just trying to solve their problems for them? And that could be housing, that could be providing cars, that could be traffic, flock cameras, whatever thing's coming up there. But I think we owe it to go, okay, which problems should we solve? I think city does a really good job of providing services. The sewers flush, the water comes out clean. The police force is out there protecting us. Fire department's out there protecting us. We're here listening to things. We're trying to decide things in people's best interest, but is it really incumbent upon us to solve every problem that gets in front of us? And I question whether or not that it really is. So I would hope to you'll probably hear me bring that up more in the next 3 years. But that's kind of my comments for the night. Are we done?
Thank you.
You got 3 minutes, guys.
Just 3 minutes, go. Thank you. Counselor Small.
Since I was reminded with our adoption of the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code of the fire trap that we have in West Glenwood that has only gotten worse since I first began to complain about it. And I'd like to get an update on that status. I see the chief is here. I'm sure he could update me. So for anybody that doesn't know, I don't know, I think it's 260 Donegan, maybe. It's across from the new storage facility on the Demos property. There is a single family residence there that's affectionately known as the Pallet Palace. There is so much debris and junk and stored materials on this lot that it makes Sanford and Son look like the White House. Huh?
Is this the flea market or the second?
It's a single family residence lot. It's what?
Yeah.
It's got like a sign that says flea market or something.
I don't remember ever seeing that sign, no.
That's a different property.
Yeah.
It's a property that has been in this kind of condition for well over a year. I was told when I started complaining about it a year ago that the neighbors had been complaining about it for a year. It's in the county, it's not in the city, but it is in the city's fire district. So I've been trying to hold the chief's feet to the fire about it.
If you recall, Counselor, we provided a few different updates about that property. Every time this come up, we provided you with the information we had, and I'll continue to do that. So that property resident or the person responsible for that property was issued a citation, and he was ordered to appear in court. That court came and went a few Fridays ago. The defendant failed to appear in that matter, so the court ordered him responsible for whatever impositions that they choose to put on that individual. So couple things. You're correct that it is not in the city of Glenwood Springs. So Glenwood Springs Police Department has no authority over there to any kind of enforcement. The fire department oversees fire hazards, as we certainly know, and those kinds of things. We do not have an enforcement arm as part of the Glenwood Springs Fire Department to impose any kind of enforcement, citations, anything like the jurisdiction I came from before. They had sworn arson investigators, and they were like peace officers. They had to go to the police academy so they could take those kind of actions. We do not have that mechanism. Certainly not in Glenwood Springs, and I don't know about anywhere in the state. So to that end, this falls back on the county's planning and building department, community development, whatever they're called over there. Mr. John Plano is the person that's in charge over there, and so they said they're gonna be dealing with this now moving forward. I do know that one option that came up was that property owner wanted the county to supply him with a large dumpster, the rolling kind. You drop it off, and he was going to clean it up. Again, that's outside our purview. I don't know where that stands. And then there's a conversation about fees and dumping. Would we waive fees for that person if they're indigent? They can't pay for the landfill fees and all that. Again, that's the scope of what I do. But to answer your question specifically, he has been held accountable. Whether we can agree on what that might be or not, the courts have dealt with that. It's in the hands of the judicial system, and then enforcement by the county.
Any idea on the timeline with the county?
I don't, and I don't know how that process works. Mr. Hanlon might be in a better position to understand if he doesn't comply with any kind of court order, what happens from there. If the county comes in and does it themselves and they bill him, I just don't have an idea how that would work.
That would probably be the process. If they got an enforcement order and he failed to comply, then a component of that, they show up and clean it out. hire somebody probably to do that, but with the sheriff observing.
So we're very well aware of it as a fire department, certainly, and it's a concern for ours. There's a lot of exposures over there. Pretty dense neighborhood, but I mean,
Absolutely.
we do what we can.
And I'm downwind of it, so I have those concerns also. And it's a very frustrating process for all of those neighbors, and it's a real stain on our government's ability to act in the confidence of the citizens. So.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
I'm not pandering here, but I do want to acknowledge, we have spent a lot of time listening to public comment and respectfully expressing appreciation for those coming before us with their concerns. I would like to also respectfully express appreciation for the law enforcement in the community, for our city staff who are trying to navigate these times. You know, things look different from a lens of information. So when you are where you're at and you look back on things, it's really easy to place judgment. Having grace in these moments, and it's really, really hard to sit and listen to comments made from a place of passion and strong conviction that maybe aren't fully informed or accurate, but no less heartfelt. And so I just want to say thank you. I appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate the position you're taking. I appreciate the guidance you're giving us. And I will be looking forward to when we can put this to best.
Thank you. Councilor Weimer.
Mr. Boyd, as city manager, you inherit a lot of problems. I have never once heard you deflect blame it on a previous administration or a previous person or a different time, place, thought. You have taken everything directly. You have used the pronoun we. We did this. This is our problem. This is our chance to fix it. We made this decision. It has nothing to do with the fact that it was 20 years ago or 20 days ago. You stand up, you take it, and you handle all of this seemingly with a lot of professionalism. And I thank you for that, because it can't be easy ever, or especially with some of these latest things. So I have recognized this from day one when this issue came up. We did this, we decided that, we missed that, we failed to do that. And very few of us in this room were even here. But it's that continuity, it's that responsibility. It's really been nice to see. Thank you.
If I may tail on that for just a second. Here. And he instills that in his staff also. The culture of the city and the responsibility is improving continuously. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your comments. City Manager.
Well, first of all, it sounds like I should get a raise. Just kidding. Just
I didn't
kidding.
pick up on that.
You didn't hear that?
No, I did not.
Thank you, counselors, for your comments. I appreciate that. Nothing from me.
Okay, thank you, Carl.
Because I'm always just full of
Ray of sunshine.
yeah, that's what I was looking for. I was gonna say full of joy. I had sent you out earlier just that we had anticipated having an exec session tonight, but we knew it was going to be kind of a tough evening, so didn't get it on to talk about an update on Mitchell Cooper, where that stands, as well as the road litigation. Just so you know, I had sent you out that we got named as a third-party defendant in the road litigation. We'll be filing an answer on that probably towards the end of next week. It's due, I think, 10 days. Anyway, I just wanted to give you an update that we were going to be doing that, so you know. And it's 8:04.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's time. Oh, right. Yeah, correspondence.
That's
first.
our thing.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Well, there was a whole bunch of emails were
Right.
admitted to the packet or to
Yeah,
the,
They
right,
validated
but
it.
nothing specific as a, correct. Thank you, Ryan. Mayor Pro Tem Solomon,
I think we may reconvene at our new favorite place, Tapatio.
sounds great. Thank you. Entertaining a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Looking for a second? Okay. Not from Counselor Weimer. He wants to stay. He just proclaimed. Anybody give me a second, please? Counselor Towns.
Second this.
Okay, and we got a call for the question. Thank you, Ryan.
Now I gotta read it.
We do, right? Like, what are we doing?
Yes, Counselor Townsley. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski. Yes, Mayor Dame. No, Counselor Weimer. Yes, Counselor Schmal. Yes, Counselor Smith. It passes